A billionaire stopped in the middle of a crowded luxury plaza when he spotted a poor girl wearing his lost necklace, the same necklace the world believed vanished forever, but instead of calling security or demanding answers, his next move stunned everyone watching. He was Nathaniel Hawthorne, a man whose name opened doors and silenced rooms, a billionaire who owned the building she stood in. But at that moment, all his wealth meant nothing compared to the shock tightening his chest. She was Emily, a poor girl in worn clothes, standing barefoot at the edge of luxury, selling handmade bracelets to people who never looked at her. But around her neck rested a necklace that did not belong to poverty, a necklace Nathaniel had buried in his memory the night his mother died. The billionaire recognized it instantly, the shape, the weight, the way it rested against her skin. His lost necklace, declared missing for years, now hanging openly on a poor girl who looked just as startled to be seen as he was to see it. People expected him to react like a billionaire. They expected anger, accusation, power. But Nathaniel did something no one could explain. He stepped closer. Why was a poor girl wearing a billionaire's lost necklace? How did she get it? And why did the billionaire's next move leave the entire crowd in stunned silence? Nathaniel Hawthorne had mastered the art of control long before he mastered wealth. At 52, his face carried the calm of a man who had survived boardroom wars, hostile takeovers, and private grief without ever letting the world see the cracks. He wore his suit like armor, tailored, understated, expensive enough that those who knew could tell, and those who didn't still felt it. The Hawthorne Galleria was his empire in glass and marble. Every store, every light, every silent camera fed into a system that answered to him. Security guards straightened instinctively when he passed. Executives lowered their voices. Even confidence seemed to rearrange itself around his presence. Yet now, he stood still. The girl stood no more than 10 feet away, half-shadowed by a pillar advertising winter collections she would never touch. Her shoulders were slightly hunched, not from guilt but from habit. Life had taught her to make herself smaller. The bracelets before her were carefully arranged, colors faded but intentional. Each one nodded with patience rather than desperation, and the necklace it rested against her collarbone as if it had memorized that place. Nathaniel's mind betrayed him, dragging him backward through time without warning. He saw his mother, Eleanor Hawthorne, seated by a hospital window, moonlight brushing her silver-streaked hair as her fingers traced that same pendant absent-mindedly. He remembered the night she pressed it into his palm years earlier, smiling weakly as she said, "Some things always find their way back." The night she died, it vanished. The police called it a theft. Insurance closed the file. The world moved on. Nathaniel never did. The girl shifted under his stare. Her fingers rose instinctively to the necklace, curling around it not to show it off, but to shield it. That single motion struck him harder than any confession could have. Thieves hid, liars deflected, but protectiveness that came from attachment. Security began edging closer. "Sir," one of them murmured behind him, already reading the imbalance of power. "Should we?" Nathaniel lifted a hand without looking back. The guard stopped. The girl swallowed and forced herself to meet Nathaniel's eyes. They were a startling gray, too steady for someone her age. "I'm not causing trouble," she said quickly. "I can move." Her voice carried no entitlement, no fear theatrics, just readiness, like someone used to being asked to disappear. Nathaniel studied her face. Dirt beneath clean fingernails. A faint scar near her temple, old and badly healed. She smelled faintly of soap, not neglect. Details layered themselves quietly, planting questions rather than answers. "What's your name?" he asked. "Emily," she replied. After a pause, "Emily Carter." The name landed with an unexpected echo he couldn't yet place. His gaze dropped again to the necklace. He knew every curve of it. The pendant was turned slightly outward, catching light in the exact way it always had. He knew what lay inside it, what no one else should. "Do you know what that necklace is?" he asked. Emily hesitated. Her grip tightened, knuckles pelling. "I know what it means," she said softly. "I don't know what it's worth." That distinction mattered. A ripple moved through the small crowd gathering now. Whispers, phones half raised, curiosity blooming where boredom had lived moments ago. A billionaire confronting a poor girl was a story people understood. But this hesitation, this quiet exchange, it didn't fit the script. Nathaniel exhaled slowly. In another life, in another version of himself, he would have demanded answers. he would have summoned lawyers, forced truths into the open. Instead, he heard his mother's voice in his memory. Calm and unwavering, truth reveals itself when it's ready. Come with me, he said. Emily stiffened. I didn't steal anything. I know, he replied, surprising them both. He turned, not toward security, but toward the private elevator reserved for executives. The guards stared. The crowd murmured louder. Just for a moment, Nathaniel added, glancing back at her. I want to talk. Emily looked down at her bracelets, at the thin line separating her world from his. Then she lifted her chin and nodded once. As she stepped forward, the necklace shifted against her skin, the pendant catching light like a signal. Nathaniel watched it closely. Some things, he knew, didn't resurface by accident. Emily stepped into the elevator, the soft hum swallowing the faint noise of the plaza behind her. Her bare feet barely made a sound on the polished marble floor, yet every step felt monumental. The scent of polished leather, fresh paint, and money she had never imagined surrounded her, pressing down like a reality she wasn't yet ready to comprehend. Nathaniel didn't speak immediately. He studied her quietly, his sharp eyes noting every detail: how she clutched the necklace instinctively, how her thin hands bore faint scars, and how her posture was too straight for someone used to hiding. You sell bracelets? He asked finally, voice calm but probing. Emily nodded. Yes, people buy sometimes. Sometimes they don't. I don't mind. Her words were simple, matter of fact, yet carried a weight of survival. Nathaniel's mind wandered for a moment. He saw a flash of his mother, Eleanor, teaching him as a boy, insisting that wealth meant nothing if you could not recognize value in small, honest work. A man's heart measures more than his hands, she had said, fingers tracing the necklace absent-mindedly. He remembered the night she tucked him into bed, whispering, some things always find their way back, and pressing the pendant into his palm. Now, seeing it around Emily's neck, those words rang loudly, echoing across time and circumstance. Your hands. They work hard, Nathaniel said softly, nodding to the faint calluses and bruises. You're not afraid of effort. Emily's gray eyes flickered with something she rarely allowed herself, recognition. I have to, she said quietly. Life. It doesn't wait for anyone. The elevator chimed, announcing the top floor. Nathaniel gestured for her to follow. I want to show you something, he said, deliberately vague. She hesitated, glancing down at the pendant as though seeking permission from it. Is this about the necklace? She asked, voice low. It is, Nathaniel admitted. But it's also about much more. As the doors opened, the office unfolded before her like a world painted in glass, wood, and gold. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the city below, yet it was silent here, intimate, removed from the chaos of the plaza. Nathaniel gestured for her to sit, then took a moment to pour 2 glasses of water, his movements deliberate. Emily looked around, eyes wide but not overwhelmed. She saw photographs: Eleanor smiling in the sun, Nathaniel as a boy holding a puppy, family gatherings where wealth was abundant but joy even more so. She noticed a small, faded journal on a shelf, its edges worn like someone had treasured it for years. You live here? She asked, a hint of disbelief in her voice. Nathaniel allowed himself a small, tight-lipped smile. I own it, he said, but that doesn't mean I understand it fully, or that I know how to live in it. Emily studied him, her gaze steady. And you're not afraid? He looked at her then, really looked, seeing a girl who had endured more than most adults. Fear doesn't disappear because of wealth, he said. It changes shape. You learn to recognize it before it recognizes you. For a moment, silence settled. Then Emily's fingers brushed the pendant again, this time almost reverently. Nathaniel's mind drifted again, recalling the night he had first held it, the promise his mother had whispered. Something told him that the necklace had chosen her, or at least prepared her, for what was coming. A knock at the door drew his attention, but Nathaniel didn't move immediately. Do you understand what it is you carry? He asked quietly. Emily shook her head. Not really. But I feel it matters. Nathaniel nodded slowly, a curiosity loop forming in his chest. How had this girl, from a world so far removed from his, come into possession of something so intimately tied to his family, and why did it feel like the first step of a story that was only just beginning? Nathaniel motioned for Emily to follow him through a hallway lined with polished mahogany and rare artwork. The city sprawled behind the glass walls, but here, in the quiet of his private domain, it felt as though time itself had slowed. He led her to a room that looked more like a study than an office. Shelves of old books, stacks of files, and a large wooden desk that had clearly seen decades of decisions shape empires. He gestured for her to sit on the worn leather chair opposite him. "Before we discuss the necklace," he said carefully, "I need to know more about you. Tell me your story, Emily." Her gray eyes darted around the room, then back to him, cautious but honest. I live with my aunt. My mom, she passed when I was young. She used to sing while cooking. She told me to always help people if I could, even if they couldn't repay you. And she left me this." Her fingers traced the necklace instinctively. Nathaniel felt a pang of recognition, a deep, almost spiritual echo. He remembered Eleanor's last days, how she had insisted that some things weren't merely possessions but vessels of memory and meaning. He leaned back, watching Emily closely, noting the way her body aligned with the pendant, protective, almost reverent. "Your mother taught you values most people forget," he said softly. "She must have been special." Emily nodded, her gaze dropping to the floor. "She was. But life didn't make it easy. We barely had enough to eat, but she always made sure we had enough heart." Nathaniel studied her hands, recalling his own childhood, the careful guidance of a mother who had understood wealth and loss, love and sacrifice, all entwined in a single family heirloom. Eleanor had always said that wealth was meaningless without purpose, and perhaps that lesson had traveled, through time and tragedy, to Emily. He decided to test her, subtly. "You're careful with this necklace," he said, nodding to the pendant. "But what if I asked you to leave it somewhere? Could you let it go?" Emily's grip tightened for a moment, but she looked him straight in the eye. "I don't know if I could," she admitted. "It's not just a necklace to me. It's a promise. A reminder." Her words triggered another memory in Nathaniel, a flash from 12 years ago, the night the pendant vanished. Eleanor had pressed it into his hand, whispering, "Always find your way home." At the time, it had felt like a gentle, comforting mantra. Now, seeing Emily wear it as a symbol of resilience, of connection, he realized the pendant had become more than a family relic. It had become a bridge across generations, across worlds he never thought would intersect. "Good," he said finally, a subtle note of approval in his voice. "Because what it represents isn't for possession. It's for understanding." Emily's brow furrowed slightly. "Understanding what?" Nathaniel let the question linger, planting a seed of curiosity. He had already sensed that the pendant wasn't simply a keepsake. It had been meant to surface when the time was right. And Emily's presence was no accident. He rose, moving to the window to look at the city below. "You've seen life from the edge, Emily. You've known scarcity, responsibility, and loss. That perspective, it's rare. It's why this necklace found you." Emily's hand instinctively touched the pendant again, a small, unconscious gesture. Nathaniel's mind raced with possibilities, connecting dots he had ignored for years. This wasn't coincidence. It had been orchestrated in ways he could only begin to guess. A distant memory tugged at him, the hospital room, Eleanor's whispered instructions, the uncertainty of the night the pendant disappeared. But Emily's presence now made everything make sense, piece by piece. And yet, the truth was only beginning to reveal itself. Nathaniel led Emily through a second door, smaller, more intimate than the first, revealing a private archive filled with shelves of files, old photographs, and carefully labeled boxes. The scent of aged paper and polished wood filled the room, a mixture of permanence and secrets. The city's clamor seemed distant, muted, as if the world itself had agreed to pause and witness this meeting. He gestured for her to stand near a table stacked with files. "Before we discuss the necklace further," he said, "I want you to understand something. Some things in life, they appear ordinary but carry the weight of truth. This," he paused, nodding toward her necklace, "is one of them." Emily's fingers brushed the pendant again, almost reverently. "I know," she said softly. "It's more than a necklace." Nathaniel studied her. "And yet, you've carried it alone, through hardship, through life that demanded more than most could endure." He let the words hang. "Tell me, Emily, have you ever been afraid of losing it?" Her gray eyes flickered, a shadow of pain crossing her face. "Every day," she admitted. But it's not mine to keep, my mother. She trusted me to protect it. Nathaniel's mind immediately pulled him into a memory. Eleanor Hawthorne, frail but radiant, pressing the pendant into his small hands years ago. Her voice was a whisper above the beeping of hospital machines. Always find your way home. At the time, it had seemed like a gentle blessing. Now, seeing Emily clutch it, he realized the pendant had carried purpose beyond his own family, a promise meant to bridge generations. He moved toward a box labeled with an old date, carefully opening it to reveal photographs and letters tied in ribbon. This necklace, he said, picking up a photograph, was part of more than wealth. It was a key to understanding decisions made, mistakes hidden, and promises kept. Emily leaned in, curiosity and caution mingling. A key to what? Nathaniel smiled faintly. Enigmatic. To truths people often hide, truths they fear will surface when the world isn't ready. Sometimes, the right person finds the right object at the right time. Sometimes, it chooses them. Emily's brow furrowed. Chooses me. Yes, he said, nodding. Not by accident. You carry more than a memory, you carry responsibility. And responsibility often comes disguised as ordinary things. A flashback struck Nathaniel. The night the pendant disappeared. Police had questioned everyone in his family circle, dismissed everything, labeled it theft. Eleanor had died believing the pendant's purpose was complete. But now, in Emily's hands, it was alive again. Its destiny was unfinished. He watched her carefully, noting the subtle ways she aligned with it, protective, reverent, instinctive. There will be tests, he said, voice low, almost a whisper, to see if you are ready for what comes next. Emily's hand instinctively brushed the pendant again. Tests. Not like you think, Nathaniel replied. More like challenges of the heart and mind. And choices you didn't know you'd have to make. She swallowed, nervous but strangely composed. I'll try. Nathaniel nodded, a spark of approval in his gaze. Good. Because some truths only reveal themselves to those willing to see beyond what is visible. Emily's gray eyes flickered with a mixture of fear, determination, and curiosity. Nathaniel knew then that this was no ordinary encounter. It was the beginning of a journey. A collision of worlds, the billionaire who had everything, and the girl who had nothing. Except a necklace that carried secrets capable of changing both their lives forever. The pendant caught the light again, glinting as if signaling the start of something monumental. Nathaniel's heart tightened. This was only the first step, but already, everything was in motion. Nathaniel guided Emily toward a large oak desk in the center of the archive. He opened a drawer, revealing a stack of old company files and personal journals, yellowed with age but meticulously preserved. I want you to organize these for me, he said, his voice calm but purposeful. It's a small task, but it will tell me a lot about you. Emily blinked, uncertainty flashing in her eyes. I've never worked in an office before. I sell bracelets, that's all. Nathaniel leaned against the edge of the desk, watching her carefully. It's not about skill, he said. It's about attention, care, and integrity. Small details can reveal more than grand gestures. Her fingers brushed the pendant instinctively, the movement almost unconscious. Nathaniel noticed the subtle hesitation in her posture, a mixture of reverence and fear. He remembered Eleanor's words again, some things always find their way back. The pendant wasn't just a memory. It was a test, and Emily was already part of it. As she began sorting the files, Nathaniel observed her closely. Each paper she touched, each label she read, carried her careful attention. There was patience in her movements, a quiet respect that spoke of hardship, survival, and a deep-seated understanding of responsibility. Emily, he said softly, why do you think your mother entrusted you with this necklace? She paused, glancing down at it. Because I think she knew I'd need to protect something bigger than myself someday. Something that matters more than money, more than life as I know it. Nathaniel nodded, impressed. The insight was rare for someone her age. He remembered his own childhood, how Eleanor had pressed the pendant into his hand with trembling fingers, whispering, always find your way home. At the time, he hadn't understood the weight of her words. Now, watching Emily, he realized the pendant had been waiting for the right person to interpret its meaning. A flashback gripped him. The hospital room. The hum of machines. Eleanor's frail smile. The whispered promise. And then the chaos of her death, the panic, the unanswered questions, the police dismissing the case. He had grieved, he had searched, he had waited. And now, in Emily, he saw the continuation of that promise. "Do you understand what you're holding?" he asked quietly. Emily looked up, gray as steady. "I don't fully understand," she admitted. "But I feel it. I feel that it's important, and that I'm supposed to keep it safe." Nathaniel smiled faintly. "Good," he said, "because the necklace carries more than memory. It carries truth, and only those willing to endure responsibility can unlock it." As she worked, Nathaniel placed an old photograph beside her files. It showed a young Eleanor with a woman Emily didn't recognize, a woman who had been a caretaker in the family years before, whose presence now hinted at a hidden connection. Emily glanced at it, curiosity flickering in her eyes, but didn't speak. Nathaniel allowed the silence to stretch, planting the first subtle seed of foreshadowing. The pendant had chosen her, yes, but it also demanded observation, patience, and discernment. Each careful movement Emily made, each glance toward the necklace, was being noted not just by Nathaniel, but by the unseen weight of history and promises embedded in the pendant. By the time she finished organizing the last file, Nathaniel's eyes held a mixture of approval and anticipation. He knew the real tests hadn't started yet. This was only the first challenge, a small, deliberate task to gauge character, patience, and instinct. Emily's hand lingered on the pendant. Nathaniel watched the way her fingers traced the edges, almost reverently. Something deep in him told him that the necklace was more than an heirloom, more than a family relic. It was alive with purpose, and Emily was its first guardian. Nathaniel retrieved an old wooden box from a high shelf, its surface scratched and worn, almost pleading to be opened. He placed it gently on the desk in front of Emily. "Inside this box are items that belong to my mother," he said quietly. "Some are trivial, some less so." Emily's eyes widened. All of this belonged to her. Nathaniel nodded. "Everything you see here carries memory, promise, and sometimes warning. You've already held the necklace. Now I want you to see what surrounds it." She hesitated, brushing her fingers against the pendant. I don't know if I should." "You can," Nathaniel said firmly, but softly, "or you can step back. But understand, some truths only reveal themselves to those willing to reach for them." Emily slowly lifted the lid. Inside were photographs, a folded handkerchief, an old journal, and a faded envelope addressed to no one. She picked up a photograph and froze. A young woman smiled back at her, a woman who looked startlingly like the mother she had never known. "Who is she?" Emily whispered. Nathaniel leaned against the desk, arms crossed. "Your mother knew her," he said carefully. "She worked in our household decades ago. A caretaker. A witness to things that most would prefer forgotten." Emily's hand tightened around the photo. "Witness to what?" Nathaniel shook his head, letting the question hang in the air. Some answers, he knew, must reveal themselves slowly, layered across time. Things that shape decisions, choices, and secrets. The necklace. It was never just jewelry. It was a message, a signal. "And now it's in your hands." Emily swallowed, gray eyes flickering between curiosity and fear. "Why me?" Nathaniel's gaze softened. "Because it chose you. Some things find their way to the right person only when they are ready. And you, through struggle, patience, and care, proved ready without even knowing it." As she lifted another item from the box, a memory. Nathaniel moved to a tall cabinet and retrieved a small, intricately carved wooden box, heavier than it appeared. The air in the room seemed to thrum with anticipation. He placed it on the desk before Emily. "Inside this," he said, "is something very few people have ever seen. Your mother understood it. My mother understood it. And now, perhaps, you will too." Emily's eyes widened. "What is it?" Nathaniel didn't answer immediately. Instead, he studied her closely, noting the subtle shifts in her posture, the protective hand brushing the pendant, the slight tightening of her shoulders, the cautious tilt of her head. All instincts honed by survival. All instincts that suggested she was ready for what came next. "This necklace," he said finally, gesturing toward the gold pendant around her neck, "is more than jewelry. It was created to guide someone capable of seeing beyond the obvious, beyond wealth, beyond comfort. It holds a map, a message, and a truth that has been hidden for years." Emily's breath caught. A map, a message. Nathaniel nodded slowly. Yes, but understanding it is not straightforward. It requires patience, intuition, and courage. It requires heart. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. And you, Emily, have already shown all three without even realizing it. A flashback surged into Nathaniel's mind the night the pendant disappeared. Police had dismissed it as theft. His mother had died believing the pendant's purpose was fulfilled. But now, seeing Emily, he realized the truth. It had been waiting, deliberately, for someone who could unlock its secrets. Someone whose life experience mirrored the lessons Eleanor had intended to pass on. Emily swallowed, her fingers tracing the pendant again. Why me? Why now? Nathaniel leaned forward, voice low but firm. Because some truths choose the right person at the right time. Others fail when forced. You, Emily, were never forced. You arrived at this moment through your own trials, your own care, your own courage. That is why the necklace found you. Emily's gray eyes narrowed in thought. So, all this your attention, the files, the boxes, it's a test. Nathaniel allowed a faint smile. A test, yes, but not of skill. A test of readiness, of understanding. There are layers you cannot yet see, and some you may never fully understand until the time is right. Emily glanced at the small wooden box, curiosity and caution mingling in her gaze. Should I open it? Nathaniel shook his head. Not yet. First, you must understand what it represents. Some doors open only when you are ready. Some truths demand patience. And some choices. He let his voice trail, heavy with implication. Have consequences that extend far beyond what you imagine. Emily's hand hovered over the box, hesitant. She thought of her mother's lessons, of surviving life's cruelties, and of the quiet strength that had brought her here. Slowly, she touched the box. The wood was cool, solid, and yielding. Nathaniel watched her closely, sensing the alignment between her instincts and the hidden power of the pendant. For a moment, silence reigned. Then, the pendant caught the light, glinting like a signal, as if acknowledging Emily's tentative step into a story far larger than either of them yet understood. Nathaniel felt a shiver of anticipation. This was more than a meeting of wealth and survival. It was a collision of history, purpose, and destiny, and the first major revelation of the necklace's true power was only beginning to unfold. Nathaniel guided Emily to a large window overlooking the city skyline. The sun was dipping behind tall glass towers, casting long shadows that danced across the polished floors. He held the small wooden box in his hands, the pendant glinting against his cuff. Emily, he said, voice deliberate, it's time you understand the first part of the necklace's purpose. Emily's fingers brushed the pendant reflexively. I'm ready. I think. Nathaniel nodded, but his eyes betrayed caution. Not everyone is ready, even if they believe they are. Courage alone is not enough. You need understanding, empathy, and the ability to see beyond what's obvious. He opened the box slowly, revealing a folded parchment, yellowed and delicate, with symbols that seemed to shimmer faintly in the light. Emily's eyes widened. What is this? Nathaniel's gaze softened. It's a guide, a map of decisions, lessons, and warnings. My mother created it with the knowledge that someone, eventually, would need to follow its path. You are that someone. The necklace. It connects to this. You were meant to find it, not by chance, but because the universe, or fate, or something greater, chose you. Emily swallowed, overwhelmed. But I'm just a girl who sells bracelets. How can I? Nathaniel interrupted gently. That's the point. The right person is often the least expected. Strength is not about wealth. Insight is not about experience. Your life prepared you in ways you didn't realize. As she traced the symbols on the parchment, a flashback struck Nathaniel the night the necklace disappeared. Eleanor's trembling hands pressing it into his palm. Always find your way home. At the time, he had thought it applied only to him. Now, he understood that the pendant had been waiting, guiding, choosing the next guardian. Emily's gaze lingered on a symbol shaped like a key, almost imperceptible at first glance. This looks like the pendant, she murmured. Is it connected? Nathaniel nodded, a faint smile on his lips. Exactly. It's a guide, but also a signal. The pendant is not just jewelry. It's a repository of choices, a compass for those capable of understanding its weight. That's why it came to you. Emily's hands trembled, not from fear, but from the enormity of the responsibility dawning on her. She thought of her mother, of the lessons she had taught her about care, honesty, and resilience. She thought of the struggles that had defined her life, the nights she had gone without, the silent determination that had kept her moving forward. Nathaniel watched her, noting the alignment between instinct and purpose. Your first challenge, he said softly, is to accept that the necklace is more than a relic. It is a responsibility. It will demand patience, courage, and integrity. And sometimes, it will test you emotionally. Emily looked down at the pendant, the glint of gold catching the fading sunlight. I understand, she whispered. A subtle pause filled the room, the weight of expectation hanging heavy. Nathaniel's mind wandered to the future, to choices yet to be made, to secrets yet to surface. He knew the real tests were only beginning. Outside, the city moved in oblivion, unaware of the quiet storm unfolding above it. Inside, the connection between a billionaire, a poor girl, and a lost necklace was solidifying, a bond forged not by coincidence, but by destiny. And Emily's first true challenge, the emotional crucible that would shape her understanding of the necklace's power, was already upon her. The next morning, Nathaniel escorted Emily to a secluded room in the Galleria, one she hadn't seen before. It was smaller, sparsely furnished, with a single table in the center and a window overlooking the bustling streets far below. A velvet-lined tray sat on the table, holding several seemingly ordinary objects: keys, letters, a folded scarf, and a small lockbox. "This is your first real challenge," Nathaniel said, voice calm but firm. "The pendant is more than a symbol. It's a guide, yes, but it also tests judgment. Today, you will choose. Your choices will determine what truths reveal themselves." Emily's fingers grazed the necklace. Her heart pounded not from fear, but from the weight of responsibility. I don't know if I'm ready." Nathaniel studied her intently. Readiness is often realized only when the choice is in front of you. Remember, courage isn't the absence of fear, it's acting despite it. She nodded, swallowing hard. Her mind flicked back to nights spent in a cramped apartment with her mother singing softly, teaching her that even small acts of honesty mattered. Every bracelet she sold, every coin she earned, had been part of survival, but this was larger than anything she had imagined. Nathaniel handed her a folded letter from the tray. "This is addressed to you," he said, "but it contains knowledge you must earn. Think carefully before opening it. Some truths are heavier than they appear." Emily hesitated, tracing the edges of the envelope. She could feel the pendant warming against her skin, almost urging her forward. Slowly, she unfolded it, revealing a letter written in delicate handwriting. Words danced before her eyes, forming a story she didn't yet fully understand, a secret connection between her family and the Hawthorns. A promise her mother had made decades earlier, and a warning that not all who sought the necklace had honorable intent. Emily's breath caught. This changes everything." Nathaniel stepped closer, his eyes softer than she had ever seen. "It does," he said, "and it is why you were chosen. Your life, your mother's lessons, your perseverance, all of it led here. Now you must decide, will you embrace the responsibility, or step back and leave it behind?" A flashback hit her mother handing her a small, wrapped bundle the night she was very young, whispering, "Always protect what matters, even when you don't understand it." Emily felt the weight of that memory press against her chest. Her gaze fell on the lockbox. Something inside told her the key she needed was not yet visible, and yet she could feel it calling. She looked up at Nathaniel. I don't know if I can do this," she admitted. Nathaniel's voice was steady and wavering. "You already have. You just don't know it yet. The pendant brought you here because it saw what I could not. Trust it. Trust yourself." Emily closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the pendant against her skin, the weight of her mother's lessons, and the silent urging of destiny. Slowly, she opened her eyes and reached for the box, determination finally mingling with the fear. As her fingers brushed the lock, a metallic click echoed, a sound that seemed to ripple through the room and even the city outside. She had made her first choice, stepping into a story far larger than she had imagined. Nathaniel's gaze lingered on her, pride and anticipation in his eyes. He knew this was only the beginning. The necklace had more to reveal, more challenges to test, and more secrets to expose. Emily's journey had begun, and with it, a collision of wealth, destiny, and hidden truth moved inexorably toward the revelation that would shock everyone. Emily's fingers lingered on the small lockbox, the pendant warm against her chest, pulsing almost like a heartbeat. Nathaniel watched silently, letting her instinct guide the moment. The city beyond the glass towers moved with careless indifference, unaware of the fate quietly unfolding in his office. Slowly, Emily lifted the lid. Inside lay a second, smaller necklace identical to the one she already wore and a folded journal. She opened it, revealing handwriting she recognized from the letter earlier. It detailed a family pact between her mother and Eleanor Hawthorne. A promise sealed decades ago. Whoever protects the pendant will inherit not just its memory, but the responsibility to preserve truth and justice within the family fortune. Her breath caught. I never knew, she whispered, fingers trembling over the page. All this time, I thought it was just a keepsake. Nathaniel stepped closer. It wasn't just a keepsake. It was a key, a guide. And now you see why it came to you. Your mother understood what most would never grasp: honesty, courage, and care aren't taught by wealth. They're tested by life. Emily looked up at him, eyes wide, a mixture of awe and fear. So, I'm supposed to, what? Manage your family's secrets? Nathaniel shook his head, a soft smile breaking through his usual stoicism. Not just manage them. Protect them, honor them, and make choices others cannot. The necklace chooses its guardian carefully. It saw in you something I had never seen in anyone else: resilience forged by necessity, and compassion forged by hardship. A flashback struck Emily the night her mother had pressed a small bundle into her hands, whispering, "Always protect what matters." She had understood it only in part as a child. Now, the meaning had crystallized. The pendant had guided her, through poverty, through survival, to this very moment. Nathaniel extended his hand. "Emily, will you accept this responsibility?" Her eyes drifted to the necklace again, then to the identical one inside the box. She realized she wasn't just holding a family relic. She was holding a bridge between past and future, between lives she had never known and the legacy she now understood. I will, she said finally, voice steady. "I'll do everything I can to honor it." Nathaniel nodded, relief and pride in his gaze. "Good. Because the choices you make from here will affect not just me or my family but countless others who rely on the integrity this pendant represents." Emily's heart raced. The weight of responsibility was immense, but so was the clarity she felt. For the first time in her life, her hardships, her resilience, and her courage all converged into purpose. Nathaniel picked up the original pendant, holding it between them. "It found you for a reason. And now, you are no longer just a girl who survived life's hardships. You are its guardian, its interpreter, and its guide." Emily clasped the pendant, a quiet determination filling her eyes. "Then I won't fail it or the people it represents." The room seemed to breathe with them, a silent acknowledgement of destiny fulfilled. Outside, the city pulsed as usual, oblivious, but inside, a profound truth had been revealed. The billionaire had found his lost necklace, but in finding it, he had found something far more valuable: a heart capable of understanding and protecting what truly mattered. Nathaniel leaned back, watching Emily carefully. He knew one thing for certain: everyone who witnessed the ripple of this story would be shocked not by the wealth, not by the necklace, but by the courage, resilience, and destiny of a girl who had turned survival into purpose. The pendant gleamed in the fading sunlight, a symbol of legacy, trust, and an extraordinary bond that no one could ever break. And in that moment, everything made sense.